Between the low hills and dense jungles of the Maya lowlands, cities of limestone rise from the earth with deliberate precision. Pyramidal temples dominate the landscape, their stepped sides cutting sharply against the sky, visible for miles through broken canopy and drifting mist. These structures are not hidden, they are meant to be seen, meant to loom, meant to remind every inhabitant where power resides. The air around these cities is thick with humidity and sound. Insects hum, birds scatter. Smoke from cooking fires drifts upward, brushing against carved stone facades already darkened by age and ritual use. Beneath this daily life, the temples remain still, massive and unyielding, their stairways worn smooth by generations of bare feet and ceremonial processions. Inside, the atmosphere changes. Light narrows, corridors compress, walls close in. The interior spaces are designed to disorient, to separate the human from the ordinary world below. Stone absorbs sound. Even whispers feel intrusive. These are not places of prayer in the modern sense, they are chambers of obligation, built to host acts believed necessary for the universe to continue. To the Maya, death is not chaos, it is order. The temples embody this belief, standing as physical arguments carved in stone. Their silence is not peaceful, it is anticipatory. Every step, every platform, every shadowed room carries the expectation that blood will be spilled here, not as cruelty, but as duty. Long before the ritual drums begin, long before victims are led upward, the temples have already done their work. They condition the city below to accept what will happen above. The design of the temples is intentional, calculated to shape behavior long before any ritual begins. Each structure dominates the city's center, aligned with celestial events, elevated above homes, markets, and fields. There is no corner of daily life where the temple cannot be seen. Power does not hide. It watches. The stairways are steep and narrow, forcing those who climb them to move slowly, deliberately, exposed to every eye below. There is no procession without humiliation, no ascent without strain. The architecture turns the body into a spectacle even before the ritual claims it. Those who climb do so, knowing they are visible, judged, and already surrendered. At the summit, space constricts. Platforms are small, intentionally limiting movement. Victims cannot flee. Priests and rulers stand close, their authority amplified by elevation and proximity. Below, the plaza fills with spectators packed tightly together, their upward gaze reinforcing the hierarchy carved into stone. Everyone understands their position in relation to the altar. Inside the temples, corridors narrow further, doorways are low, ceilings press down. The body is forced to bow, to submit physically before submission becomes ideological. Darkness replaces orientation. Sound is absorbed, swallowed by stone. Isolation is complete. Fear is not accidental here, it is engineered. These structures do more than host rituals. They train the population. They teach silence, obedience, and acceptance through repetition and scale. The temple is not merely a religious site. It is an instrument of control, ensuring that when death comes, it feels inevitable, sanctioned, and beyond challenge. Mayan belief holds that the universe is unstable by nature, a fragile balance maintained only through constant exchange. The gods do not create freely. They demand repayment. Every sunrise, every rainfall, every harvest is understood as borrowed time, granted conditionally and revocable without warning. Creation stories reinforce this logic. The gods sacrifice themselves to set the sun in motion. Humanity exists because blood has already been spilled at the beginning of time. From this premise, obligation follows naturally. If the gods bled to create the world, humans must bleed to sustain it. Debt is not symbolic, it is literal. This belief removes choice from the equation. Sacrifice is not cruelty, it is maintenance. Failure to pay risks drought, famine, disease, and cosmic collapse. Fear is embedded directly into theology. To question the ritual is to endanger everyone. Compliance becomes moral responsibility. Priests interpret celestial movements, eclipses, and calendar cycles as warnings. A misaligned planet or delayed rain is framed as evidence of unpaid debt. The solution is always the same: more blood, more offerings, more lives transformed into currency for divine favor. Within this system, death is not tragedy. It is transaction. The victim's body becomes a vessel through which the community negotiates survival. Individual suffering is erased beneath collective fear, and the logic of sacrifice becomes self-sustaining. The universe must be fed, and the temples stand ready to collect. In Maya cities, political authority and religious obligation are inseparable. Kings rule not simply as leaders, but as living conduits between the human world and the divine. Their legitimacy depends on performance, on the visible ability to communicate with gods who are believed to watch closely and punish failure without mercy. Priests control knowledge. Calendars, rituals, astronomical calculations, and sacred texts remain restricted to a narrow elite. This monopoly shapes reality itself. When disaster strikes, priests explain why. When blood is required, priests decide how much. Their interpretations are treated as fact, reinforced by fear and tradition rather than debate. Ritual killing becomes theater, staged at the highest point of the city. Kings appear adorned in jade, feathers, and carved bone, elevated above the crowd, their bodies transformed into symbols of cosmic order. Participation in sacrifice, whether by offering blood, captives, or kin, reinforces their role as necessary intermediaries. Power is renewed publicly, through death. The violence is not chaotic, it is choreographed. Drums mark time, incense thickens the air. Every gesture is codified, practiced, and repeated across generations. The audience below learns not just obedience, but expectation. This is how order is maintained. This is how the world continues. In this system, questioning authority is indistinguishable from threatening the cosmos itself. Kings and priests do not need constant force. Belief does the work for them. And belief, once internalized, becomes the most effective instrument of control the temples possess. War in the Maya world is not fought solely for territory. It is fought for bodies. Captives are the most valuable outcome of conflict, measured not by their lives, but by their usefulness once stripped of freedom. Victory is displayed through restraint, not slaughter. The enemy must be kept alive. Once captured, identity begins to erode. Names are replaced with roles. Status is inverted deliberately. Former warriors are paraded through plazas, bound, painted, and marked so the population can witness their transformation from human adversaries into ritual property. The process is slow, public, intentional. Captives are housed near temple complexes, kept visible but inaccessible. They are fed, cleaned, and preserved, not out of compassion but maintenance. A damaged offering risks divine displeasure. The body becomes an object of preparation, inspected and controlled by priests who understand its future purpose. Humiliation is part of sanctification. Clothing is removed or replaced with symbolic garments. Hair is cut or styled to signify submission. Movement is restricted. Speech is irrelevant. The captive's value no longer lies in thought or will, only in what their death will represent. By the time the ritual approaches, resistance has already been broken. The captive is no longer treated as a person by the system surrounding them. They are an instrument of exchange, a vessel for blood, elevated not in honor, but in function. The temple does not ask who they were, it only cares what they will provide. The ascent begins in full view of the city. Drums sound from the plaza below, slow and deliberate, their rhythm impossible to escape. Smoke rises from burning copal, drifting upward along the stairway, blurring the line between ground and summit. The entire city is watching. The steps are steep, uneven, worn smooth by centuries of ritual use. The climb is slow by design. Each movement exposes the body, extending the moment, denying any sense of mercy or speed. There is no disguise for what is coming. The altar is visible from the first step. Guards and priests flank the captive, their presence steady, practiced. There is no struggle allowed here. Resistance would break the ritual's order. The victim is expected to walk, to participate in their own offering, to demonstrate submission to the gods before the blade ever touches skin. Below, the crowd remains silent or murmurs in low tones. Children watch from shoulders and rooftops. Elders avert their eyes or stare without expression. Attendance is not optional. Witnessing is part of the obligation. To look away is to risk suspicion. With each step upward, the world narrows. The sky feels closer, the plaza recedes, the body tires. Fear has nowhere to go. By the time the summit is reached, the ritual has already begun. The climb itself has done its work, transforming anticipation into submission and submission into inevitability. At the summit, violence is no longer improvised. It follows rules older than any individual present. The methods of killing are deliberate, symbolic, and repeated across generations, each one chosen to satisfy specific cosmic meanings rather than human mercy. Heart extraction is among the most prominent. The victim is forced backward onto the stone altar, chest exposed to the sky. Limbs are restrained. A blade of obsidian, sharp enough to split flesh cleanly, is driven beneath the ribs. The heart is removed while it still beats, lifted upward so the gods can see proof of payment. The body convulses briefly. The crowd below understands exactly what has occurred. Decapitation serves a different function. Heads are taken cleanly and displayed, sometimes mounted on racks or placed along temple stairways. The act symbolizes the severing of earthly power, a warning to enemies and subjects alike. Identity is erased in a single motion, reduced to a relic of obedience. Bloodletting rituals stretch death over time. Cuts are made to tongues, genitals, ears, or limbs, draining the body slowly. The emphasis is not on speed but endurance. Suffering is believed to increase the offering's potency. Pain becomes contribution. Every method is precise. Every movement is controlled. There is no chaos, no hesitation. The priests do not rush. They have done this before. Many times. The ritual is not about the victim alone. It is about reinforcing the lesson that life exists only by permission, and permission can be withdrawn publicly, efficiently, and without remorse. Among the most disturbing rituals are those reserved for children. In Maya belief, youth is associated with purity, rain, and renewal. Children are considered closer to the gods, less burdened by sin, their suffering believed to carry greater weight in the cosmic exchange. Innocence becomes value. During times of drought or crisis, children are selected carefully. Age, health, and appearance matter. Some are taken from conquered communities. Others are offered by their own families, not as punishment, but as obligation. Refusal risks social isolation or accusations of endangering the city. The rituals emphasize fear. Tears are not avoided. They are encouraged. Crying is interpreted as a sign that the gods are listening, that the offering is genuine. Priests manipulate terror deliberately, knowing that emotional distress amplifies the ritual's perceived effectiveness. Children are led to synods, altars, or temple summits, often adorned with ceremonial paint and garments meant to signify sacred purpose. The decorations do not soften the outcome, they mask it. The crowd watches in silence, conditioned to reinterpret horror as necessity. The psychological cost is carried by everyone involved. Parents learn that love is conditional. Children learn that safety is temporary. The society absorbs the message quietly. Even innocence is expendable. In this system, no life is beyond claim, and the gods' hunger does not recognize age. Beyond death itself, the system exerts control through the body in quieter, more corrosive ways. Captivity does not end at restraint. For some victims, particularly young women and adolescents, sexual domination becomes part of the ritual economy surrounding the temples. This violence is rarely carved in stone, but it is preserved in patterns, testimonies, and silence. Captured women are removed from public view long before sacrifice. Their isolation serves multiple purposes. It breaks resistance. It erases social identity. It transfers ownership of the body from family or community to the temple itself. What happens in these spaces is not discussed openly, but it is understood. Sexual access is framed as sacred entitlement. The victim's body is treated as already claimed by the gods, making violation not a crime, but a function of ritual authority. Purity and desecration exist simultaneously within doctrine, twisted together to justify domination. The contradiction is never resolved, it is absorbed. Humiliation is intentional. Nudity, exposure, and forced compliance strip away dignity before death occurs. The process ensures that the victim reaches the altar already broken, already reduced to an object. The ritual does not merely kill, it erases. The broader population learns from this silence. Fear becomes layered. Obedience is reinforced not only by the threat of death, but by the knowledge that the body itself can be claimed, used, and discarded in the name of cosmic order. The temple's power extends beyond the blade. It reaches into shame, control, and the intimate spaces no one dares to describe aloud. Once the ritual begins, the act of spilling blood is elevated into performance. It is not private. It is deliberate, theatrical, and intended to be witnessed by the city below. Every drop carries meaning, proof that the gods have been fed, that order is maintained, and that the authority of kings and priests remains unchallenged. Blood is collected on stone slabs, smeared across altars, and sometimes sprinkled down temple steps. It stains the carvings, darkening glyphs and faces of the gods in a permanent reminder of compliance. To the crowd, the sight is simultaneously terrifying and instructive. Life is fragile. Authority is absolute. Resistance is pointless. The tempo of the ritual reinforces its psychological impact. Drums pound steadily, chants echo. Smoke rises from incense, carrying scent and fear into every corner of the plaza. The crowd's gaze is fixed. Silence is not passive, it is training. Witnessing is an act of submission, as necessary as the sacrifice itself. Even the aftermath is orchestrated. Bodies are not immediately removed. Bones may be preserved, displayed, or deposited within temple foundations. Every act of bloodshed becomes part of the city's collective memory, a lesson etched into flesh, stone, and conscience. In this way, the ritual is never simply an offering to the gods. It is a lesson in power, obedience, and inevitability. The spectacle ensures that fear is inherited, repeated, and internalized, long after the victim has fallen and the crowd has dispersed. The plaza surrounding the temple is never empty. Citizens gather to witness the rituals, compelled by law, custom, or fear. Silence dominates the crowd, but it is heavy with tension. No one speaks freely. Every eye is measured, every movement constrained. Observation itself is participation. Children watch from shoulders or rooftops, absorbing lessons in hierarchy and consequence before they can name them. Adults, too, internalize the theater, understanding that compliance is safer than questioning. The collective gaze reinforces control. Those who watch become instruments of the system, their attention amplifying the ritual's power. Even passive presence carries pressure. To leave early, to look away, or to speak out invites suspicion. Obedience is enforced socially, psychologically, and morally. Fear becomes inherited, embedded in every generation, taught through example and repeated performance. Through the crowd, the message spreads silently. Violence is expected. Authority is absolute. Cosmic order is maintained at the cost of human life. Each ritual solidifies the lesson. Survival is linked not to virtue, but to conformity, and the city itself becomes a participant in the perpetuation of terror. The temple does not rely solely on the blade. Its audience ensures obedience. Its architecture guarantees visibility. Its rituals embed fear deep enough that even after the sacrifice ends, the lesson echoes long into memory and daily life. Within the walls of the temples, every act of violence is framed as duty rather than cruelty. Priests and rulers speak in terms of obligation, cosmic balance, and the survival of the city. Moral questions are dismissed before they can arise. To hesitate is to risk not only punishment but the wrath of the gods themselves. Explanations are precise and codified. Blood is necessary to nourish the sun. Tears are proof of devotion. Captivity and humiliation are transformed into evidence of divine order. The narrative is absolute. Those who suffer are not victims. They are offerings fulfilling a sacred law that no mortal may challenge. This justification shapes more than action. It shapes thought. Witnesses, participants, and the ruling elite alike internalize the doctrine. Doubt is suppressed, fear rationalized, and compliance reinforced. Even those who see horror firsthand come to interpret it as necessity, a moral framework that demands participation without question. Silence becomes part of the ritual. No one speaks of doubt openly. No one recounts fear aloud. The city collectively enforces the narrative. By reframing violence as sacred, the Maya system transforms what would otherwise be chaos into order, and what would be tragedy into proof of obedience. In this environment, morality is subordinate to ritual. Humanity bends to doctrine. The consequences of defiance are immediate and visible, ensuring that sacred justification is not merely explanation. It is enforcement, unyielding and absolute. Survivors of the rituals carry memories that cannot be spoken aloud. The city's moral framework leaves no space for grief or protest. Fear, shame, and horror are internalized, held privately because the collective culture offers no vocabulary for their expression. Children who witness sacrifices grow into adults, conditioned to associate life with submission. Their understanding of morality is entwined with survival. Parents who offer their own children suppress guilt, framing it as obedience to the gods. Even empathy is reshaped into ritualized acceptance. For captives who survive, trauma is compounded. They are returned to communities that may distrust them, fear them, or blame them for their own survival. Their bodies, their minds, and their memories are transformed into instruments of cautionary example. Escape does not guarantee freedom. Only exposure to suspicion, marginalization, or further exploitation. This psychological imprint extends beyond individuals. Communities learn to anticipate violence, to normalize its inevitability, and to participate in its perpetuation. Memory is manipulated, horror is codified, silence becomes inheritance. The system ensures that the cost of ritual is not confined to death. It extends through generations, shaping identity, expectation, and behavior. Fear is both immediate and eternal, leaving marks deeper than stone, longer lasting than the blood smeared upon temple steps. The temples themselves are repositories of memory, built to preserve the evidence of sacrifice across generations. Bones are embedded in foundations, sometimes beneath the very steps that lead to the altars. Every slab, every stair, every carved glyph absorbs centuries of ritual, silently recording what the city chooses to remember, and what it chooses to forget. Blood stains stone, darkening crevices and carving permanence into surfaces meant to endure. The scent of smoke, incense, and iron lingers in cracks long after ceremonies conclude, a subtle but persistent reminder of the acts performed there. The architecture becomes both witness and teacher, encoding lessons of obedience into the very walls. These structures are more than sacred spaces. They are instruments of social memory. Future generations climbing the same steps encounter shadows of terror that shaped their ancestors. Even when the human participants are gone, the lessons endure. Life is contingent, authority is absolute, and the gods' demands outweigh personal morality. The Maya temples preserve both spectacle and consequence. Every ritual, every offering, every act of terror is archived within stone and bone. In this way, death does not vanish. It accumulates, it teaches. It endures beyond the limits of individual memory, ensuring that the terror and discipline of the past remain active in the consciousness of the living. As centuries pass, the great Maya cities begin to falter. Drought, warfare, and social strain erode the foundations of power. Yet rather than ending the rituals, these pressures intensify them. Desperation demands more offerings, more blood, more evidence of devotion. The temples consume the living with a renewed hunger. The population experiences the rituals differently during collapse. Fear becomes sharper, obedience more urgent. Leaders exploit anxiety, claiming cosmic retribution for every misfortune. Violence becomes cyclical. Scarcity drives sacrifice. Sacrifice justifies authority, and authority enforces compliance. The cycle tightens like a noose. Exposures of the system's brutality reach beyond the elite. Commoners witness the deaths of captives, of children, and even of their own. leaving long-lasting psychological scars. Families understand that survival depends on participation, silence, and conformity. Moral choice has vanished under pressure, replaced by necessity and coercion. Even as the city crumbles, the temples retain their presence, their stones unyielding, their inscriptions silent but eloquent. They preserve not only memory, but expectation. That life is secondary to ritual, and that cosmic obligation is never negotiable. In this way, collapse amplifies the horrors, ensuring that the system of terror persists even as civilization begins to fade. Today, the temples stand silent, their limestone facades weathered and overgrown, yet they continue to speak. The jungle has reclaimed much, but it cannot erase the echoes of ritual, the faint residue of fear embedded in stone, the patterns of violence carefully inscribed into architecture and memory. Archaeologists uncover bones, ceremonial blades, and sacrificial altars, evidence of a world where death was not private, but social, public, and sanctioned. Every find is a fragment of a system that demanded obedience, participation, and complicity. The human cost is visible not just in remains, but in the structures themselves, in the shadowed steps and constricted corridors that shaped terror into tradition. Silence in these ruins is deceptive. It does not signal peace, only the absence of living witnesses. Yet the lessons of the past endure. Power, ritual, and fear are inseparable. Obedience was earned in sweat, in tears, and in blood, and the temples themselves are proof. The Maya may no longer perform these rituals, but the logic that governed them, the cosmic debt, the control of bodies, the public display of obedience, remains legible for those who look closely. The stones remember what people were trained to forget, that religion, architecture, and authority can converge to consume life itself, leaving only memory, fear, and the quiet endurance of stone.